5G is the cellular data of the digital world. The infrastructure began rolling out in 2018, becoming live in South Korea, China, and the USA, and soon to follow United Kingdom. It's planned to be live globally by 2025. Not everyone is excited for this advancement. As a passionate believer of the welfare of living beings, I wanted to know exactly how 5G will affect us and our planet.
I'm Amani Al-Turk, and I'm a naturopathic practitioner.
Amani explains the electromagnetic spectrum and why it is important to consider radio frequency while looking at 5G.
You've got to understand how electromagnetic frequencies work. The lowest frequency is AM, radio waves. Then we move to FM, which is a slightly higher frequency still. Then there's microwave. We know the effects of microwave frequency. They travel through us. Then you move up still into just below the visual spectrum to millimeter waves. That is 5G.
It is important to note that in the UK we are currently using a non-standalone 5G radio with a 4G core network.
4G is microwave frequency. Microwaves will interact with us, they'll warm us up, causing water molecules to oscillate and damaging nerves and proteins in the body and so on. Millimeter waves are more damaging still by creating heat and damaging the DNA and interfering with nervous responses, communication between the mind and the brain and the body. It causes increase in cortisol levels, it causes hormonal disruption. 5G is the highest frequency, approaching the visual spectrum frequency, as in it oscillates.
There has currently been no testing for 5G operating on a millimeter wave system. Regardless, it is planned to be rolled out by mobile companies in the UK.
Beamforming technology is one of the solutions that they're using in order to overcome the shortness that the signal travels or the wavelength travels. So it literally fires the signal at the user's phone or device. Because the signal can't travel through foliage or buildings, they use the beamforming technology to triangulate. So it will fire against the building and then triangulates to the user. If you imagine how many people are going to be using their devices and how much triangulation there'll be a massive amount of electromagnetic smog. Point of transmission is where it's most dangerous, most damaging. Now imagine that outside your house, outside your school, outside your bedroom, your hospital room. They will be everywhere because the signal cannot travel any further than just under 1,000 meters.
To get a balanced opinion, I spoke to Telecom's director, Frank Rosa.
Vodafone demonstrated the first holographic phone call in September in the UK. Cosmote in Greece put on a concert this year with 5 band members on a stage, except that they weren't on a stage. They were all in different parts of the country and their images sort of beamed in onto the stage over 5G.
One of the positive things about 5G is that it will be instant transmission of a signal. You can transmit a signal in Australia and it will arrive instantly in England.
But imagine that you could have an entirely virtual office in the cloud with only your holographic image going to that meeting. Think of the effects this would have on cutting down pollution, cutting down transport, cutting down the effects on the planet.
So the most vulnerable people, unfortunately, are the elderly and young children. The elderly have already got a much reduced ability to deal with stress, and electromagnetic radiation is a stress. In fact, that's how it causes a damaging effect biologically. Children's skulls are way thinner than our skulls. The heating effects of current mobile phone technology are way more dramatic in young children. So in a 3-year-old, the heat effects are significant, moving to the opposite side of the skull, whereas an adult would move near to the center of the skull. It's just a cause of concern that needs to be considered, and people need to be made aware of the potential risks that they're putting their children under.
Public Health England, I think, responded this year to a Freedom of Information Act request in a very clear and concise way, that in their opinion there's no evidence that exposure to radio waves when under the guidelines pose any significant health risk or hazard.
This is a follow-on, it's not a replacement. No one has done any studies for safety or effect of the interacting effects of the microwave radiation from 4G plus the millimeter waves from 5G and how they affect life from the smallest to us. Ultimately, of course, we're important, but our ecology, the ecosystem around us, they don't have an option. My child doesn't have an option. Insects, plants, the life around us, we are beings of electromagnetic frequency. That's how our nervous system communicates to the rest of our body. The unavoidable effects of 5G on biological life is that it is absorbed by water. Everything alive contains water. And the electromagnetic frequencies are the same size as the size of small insects and bacteria, and they will just completely destroy them, heat them to a point where they'll just explode. It will completely change the ecology. It will affect everything that is alive. Birds are also affected because they just completely lose their ability to navigate.
I'm not a doctor and I'm not a scientific researcher, I'm a telecommunications engineer, but I turn to experts like Public Health England.
Look up Powell. He really does put in point form how 5G can be harmful, is harmful. There are pockets of children, pockets of people around mobile phone masts that are showing increased rates of cancer, and it's being ignored, it's just not being spoken about.
And one thing that perhaps isn't generally known is that most people's exposure to radio waves comes from the handset. It's not from the base station, because the exposure falls off typically with the square law of a distance.
So let me demonstrate. This is an electromagnetic radiation monitor. It is my mobile phone. It's currently on flight mode. Now, this will make audible the electromagnetic signals that the mobile phone is transmitting. So I'm taking it off of flight mode. Wi-Fi is on, and so is. It's that distance away, and it's giving me an alarm. It means that the RF is really high, and that you should effectively get it away from your body. It's causing biological effect. It's peaking at 3 megagauss at the moment. These technicians that are going up installing the dishes or the small cells or even the monopoles, I wouldn't want that job. Not knowing what I know. I can't not know what I know. I wouldn't want that job. It will interfere with the way the heart works. It will destroy, they will melt their eyes. If you think about 5G, it's not ionizing, but it can be damaging. When you see smart meters that pulsate, they constantly pulsate the signal. Foliage will not grow around a smart meter. Ants, insects, will lose their coordination. They start going around in circles, and they'll eventually die. We can't possibly imagine, but when you watch them, you get an idea of what's happening. When you look in detail at these things, you can't ignore the obvious ill effects of our technology. Technology is not a bad thing, but there is a tipping point, and we're at that point where we need to start to really focus on keeping ourselves safe and optimizing the positive effects of technology and limiting the negative effects. Do we really need self-automating vehicles? I'm not sure that we do.
Just the telepresence aspect of 5G, I think, could be significant in years to come.
Keep your phone on airplane mode as much as possible. Your sat-nav will work in airplane mode. Switch off your phone, actively switch off your phone at night. Switch off your Wi-Fi at night. Never sit too close to the Wi-Fi or your phone. I mean, I always sit with my phone about that far away from me, always. I'm not trying to stop 5G, please don't misunderstand. I am trying to establish whether or not it's safe. It's been halted in various countries in order to prove that it's safe, but it has actually been stopped in France. It's been stopped in Belgium. There needs to be safety measures taken and explored, and it cannot be rolled out without those. The future worries me for my child and his children. I am profoundly concerned about how technology has moved unregulated. It profoundly worries me that Big Mobile are controlling much of the knowledge that's out there about technology, and unfortunately there's very limited knowledge out there how technology works and how potentially it can be harmful. Hence, I'm highly motivated to help raise awareness in this area.
Prove that it's safe! Prove that it's safe! Prove that it's safe! Prove that it's safe!
People are all too happy looking down rather than really looking around them.
We are the future. Our children are the future. The more we are aware, the more they will be aware, and pass the knowledge on. Let's educate each other and those around us. Ultimately, if we choose the right path, it will result in being able to save our planet.